All right, welcome into the Cards Hub Postgame Show here on Sports Hub STL. Chris Pelikan, Ethan Hannaford with you for as long as anybody wants to be with us. That's basically our timeline today. Again, this is the Cards Hub Postgame Show. Folks, Cards lose 4-1 today to the Phillies. Second game of the series after winning on Friday night. They will go for the rubber game will be played tomorrow at Busch Stadium. And folks, this is your show. It's Ethan, mine, and yours. So jump into that YouTube chat. Love to have your thoughts while you're down there. Hit that subscribe button. That helps us out quite a bit. So as I mentioned, joined by Ethan Hannaford, who is live at Busch Stadium, just witnessing the Cardinals fall to 6-8 on the season with a 4-1 loss. Ethan, I will send it your way, but Christopher Sanchez, just kind of the story of the game today for the Phillies, elicits 4 double plays. Then they had another one by Jordan Romano later. But again, you were down talking to the players and Ollie Marmol after the game. What is the vibe down there at Busch as the Cards fall to 6-8?
So I think that space here in our comment section summarizes it perfectly. Just please, no more double plays tomorrow. That's all. That's all that we're asking for. Or even if we do have a double play, like maybe 1 or 2, like not 5.
I think they hit their quota, didn't they, today?
That they did. The Cardinals had their opportunities in this one. Runners in scoring position weren't able to capitalize, though. And the part that I think is the most unfortunate is that a couple of those times, yes, they did not hit the ball hard, but a couple of them were hit pretty hard. Arenado's notably at the end of the game. So tough breaks at times. Christopher Sanchez has been a good starting pitcher in this league now for a couple of seasons. It's not like the Cardinals didn't get to him. They had 8 hits in this game. Yep. So they most definitely had the offense going, just could not. The most notable part was they weren't able to really put together enough extra base hits, enough power in this one to really do enough damage. That was the name of the game. You're going to run into that sometimes in this game. This wasn't a poorly played game. That's just a good baseball team on the other side that you faced off today against, and they got the best of you. You tip your cap. That's part of it. That was one of Ollie Marmol's biggest messages during the post-game show today, was just, that's a good team over there, and they played like a good team, and we didn't play poorly. You would like for the Cardinals to be able to manufacture more runs like they have for the large majority of the season. It didn't happen today. It's part of the game.
He is Ethan Hannaford. I am Chris Pelikan. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show, and it's brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com, and by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Again, we need your input on this thing. We'll probably kick around a bunch of topics over the course of the next 30, 45 minutes, but jump into that comment section right down there in YouTube land. And also, like I said, please hit that subscribe button while you are down there. So, you mentioned it, obviously, the 5 double plays. First time in 14 years the Cardinals have hit into that many. It ties a franchise record. And if you're going to run into a guy like Christopher Sanchez who throws that very heavy sinker, that's the game plan, right? This is Dave Duncan's, dream come true, a guy who just hammers people in like that and forces the ball on the ground. And Ethan, you did mention it. The Cardinals wind up today with, I believe, 9 hits, but just 1 extra base hit, right? Luken Baker gets the double. And you and I have talked about this a little bit. I've mentioned this with some of the other hosts. The concern that people are going to have offensively, and you have to be happy with what you've seen so far this year, but the lack of slug, right? And as much as I love Brendan Donovan, who clearly is a guy who can play anywhere, he can hit anywhere in the lineup, he just puts together good at-bats. But when Brendan Donovan's sitting in the 3-hole or the 5-hole today, this is not a guy you're expecting to hit 30 home runs in the course of a season. He's a professional hitter who puts together quality at bats. And so I do have my concerns that we might have a team full of decently good average hitters, 250 to 275, with slugs, sub 400.
Yeah.
And I think that's in a game like today where they did get guys on the bases, just nothing to drive them home.
Yeah, that proved to be a big issue today. It was an issue in yesterday's game as well. And when you think back, when was the last time that the Cardinals hit a home run? I can't even remember off the top of my head.
You're way younger than me. I can't remember, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast today. So.
Yeah, so that has been an issue here early in the season. I think that you have to take with a grain of salt that Nolan Gorman, one of your biggest power hitters, has been out. You hope that that's going to click eventually for Jordan Walker. I'm more so like the approach that he has had early in the season. If if the results aren't showing this early in the year, then okay, like let's be patient. Let's let it play out. Ivan Herrera was just when he was
Sure.
starting to figure out the power. Things were obviously he has the bone bruise, so that's unfortunate for him. So let's hope that Gorman getting added into this lineup hopefully adds a little bit of that oomph back. He's going to be playing, I imagine, every day now with just the injuries that they have. So, but I'm sure we'll discuss that and more on that. Alec Burleson's been quiet to start off the year. That's a 20 home run guy for you. Nolan Arenado, the bat speed's been there. That's definitely improved, but we haven't seen a home run out of him since opening day. So is it going to shift into power? Is it going to be more of a doubles guy now? What are we going to see from Nolan Arenado from a power sense? So there is a lot of question marks. I don't think it's going to be throughout the year as quiet as it's been the last several games, because when you're going to get some of these guys healthy, hopefully Nolan Gorman's power can leave an impact. But I do agree with you. At the end of the day, this team was not built for power. They weren't built for slug. And that'll definitely be something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah. And when you run into a guy like Sanchez, who, people might not know the name, the guy put together a fantastic season last year. He's quietly becoming, a linchpin of that rotation. We all know the names Nola and Wheeler, those guys. But Christopher Sanchez is every bit as reliable. And you saw him work in and out of trouble all day today. And again, when he needed to make the pitches, he made the pitches. So, I don't really fault the Cardinals for, I love the statistic that Chip Carey mentioned numerous times on the broadcast today, that in his first few starts, Christopher Sanchez had not given up a hit to a left-handed batter up until today. Cardinals get 3 hits off him. So again, they had as much success against him as anyone, clearly just not enough today. But switching topics real quick about the other side of the bump today, and Miles Mikolas. And Ethan, the last time he was out there, I thought we were, the DFA calls were loud and proud on that day. And what does Miles Mikolas do? He bounces back. And was he great today? Not particularly, but you know what he was? He gave him 5 really strong innings, a little bit of bad luck on that 3-2 pitch to Schwarber that got called a ball that clearly was in the zone. That leads to 2 runs. Little bits, but for the most part, Miles Mikolas commanded, what he was supposed to be doing today. And now we get all the more confused because, boy, we were sure of ourselves last week that he was on the downturn. This was a DFA candidate before long. And then he goes out today and throws a really efficient 5 innings.
Yeah, let's be reminded that 2 of Miles Mikolas' 3 starts, he's gone at least 5 innings and he's allowed 3 or less runs. Let's keep that in mind. I
was going to say too that I think he probably could have extended. That they wanted to get Matt's stretched out a little bit before he enters the rotation. So I think Mikolas had another inning in him before they pulled him today.
I think he probably did. I think he ended up throwing ahead right here. He threw 82 pitches, so he probably could have gone another one. I know he let up that run in the 5th that he looked a little bit frustrated about. But yeah, I thought that Miles Mikolas looked pretty sharp. Now, missed calls are going to be part of the game. Should he have gotten out of that inning? Yes, but it doesn't mean that it's a gimme for an excuse for allowing 2 runs and throwing him. Letting that pitch ride right over the middle of the zone is a little bit of a meatball for Castellanos. So, but he responded really well after that in his final 5 innings of work. I think he was a little bit PO'd from that first inning, perhaps, because he had the strikeout numbers in there as well. 6 today. Talking with a soul, commenting, saying that was the most shocking stat of the day, which is saying something considering the double plays. When was the last time that Miles Mikolas struck out 6 batters? That's not his profile anymore. At one point, that was a little bit more of his game. It was never the total side of his game, right? The overwhelming side. But we've seen him have that ability in the past. It feels like it's been a little while. So for him to be able to muster up some swing and miss stuff against this Philadelphia lineup today, I was very encouraged by. This is a top 5 lineup, arguably, in base. I don't even know if it's arguably. I think it's probably pretty surefire that this is a top 5 lineup in baseball. So for seeing what we saw from Miles Mikolas today, in large part, he gave up 3 hits. One of the walks was one that shouldn't have been a walk. The other walk led to a run. It just goes to show that walks will kill you. They hurt him in his first start as well. That he probably shouldn't have lost, but they ended up losing in. So if we get this Miles Mikolas, I don't expect us to get 6 strikeouts out of Miles Mikolas every time he comes out on the mound. But if we can get this Miles Mikolas, where we're looking at 5 innings of 3-run, I would be very okay with that throughout the season for the Cardinals. I know that we talked about him being a guy that is going to be able to give you the quantity of innings. I still think that he can. He probably could have gone a 6th inning, as you mentioned today. But even if we're getting 5 out of Miles Mikolas, because of how low the expectation is, I would be okay with that personally.
I agree. House money at this point in time.
Yeah.
And obviously, you and I have talked about the decisions this team's going to have to make long term about whether or not, what is the direction they're going in. And we've chatted about the fact that a guy like Miles Mikolas in the final year of his contract, if he shows durability, if he shows the ability to go out and be a quality start guy, the 6 innings, 3 runs type thing, which is about where he was, that there will be a trade market for him at some point in time. And so again, I know that we're going to have a lot of people still saying Michael McGreevy should be in this rotation. Mikolas should not. Steven Matz should not. But again, they didn't lose this game today because of Miles Mikolas. And, right now we're in meatloaf territory where 2 out of 3 ain't bad, on his starts. And if we continue to see 5 innings, continue to see, the strikeout numbers, again, I do agree with talking with Soul that the 6 strikeouts are not going to be all that prevalent, but end of the day, there was not a ton of solid contact against him. 12 batters retired in a row at one point in time. Obviously that was broken by the walk to Brandon Marsh that led to, an RBI double next time up. But, again, I think that you got to walk away from this thing somewhat encouraged by what you saw from Mikolas. So, and this leads into the kind of a next discussion. And folks, again, once your thoughts on this in the YouTube chat, jump in. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show here on Sports Hub STL. We love your comments. Hit that subscribe button as well while you are down, leaving a comment as well. So Steven Matz comes in and throws 46 pitches in relief today. Couple of 2 in, I think, he was 2 and a third innings. This is his last appearance before he enters the rotation a week from today, and they go to a 6-man rotation. So, Ethan, love your thoughts. Would love the panel's thoughts as well on this idea that the Cardinals should go with 6 and that Steven Matz is the right guy to be your 6th.
I think it depends on which bullpen you get. I don't know if you continue to get the struggling bullpen that you've had for 11 of the first 13. Well, that's not fair to say. For at least the majority of the games to start off this season, then I don't understand it, because now you're taking out Steven Matz, who's been your number 2 left-handed pitcher in the bullpen to start off the year behind JoJo Romero. You could argue that Matz has been better, but he was never the number 1 guy. But I thought that it was pretty telling, and I've said this a couple of times. I thought that it was pretty telling that they elected to go with Steven Matz in extra innings on Wednesday in the matinee against Pittsburgh over John King in the 13th inning. Now Steven Matz is going to the rotation, which Ollie Marmol did mention today in the postgame that this is the last game that Steven Matz would be in the bullpen for. The goal was to get him to around 50 pitches so that he could be around 65 for his next start. If the bullpen continues to struggle, then it's going to put you in a really tough position, because now you're down to 6 guys. But if we see the bullpen that we've seen the last 3 nights from the Cardinals, which has been much better, Phil Maton and Ryan Helsley were very good last night. We had a good inning out of John King tonight. I was very encouraged by the stuff that we saw from Rodri Munoz today and the 2 batters that he faced. Not a simple, easy outing. He enters the game with runners on second and third. That cut I thought he used the cut fastball and the sinker very well. He got some swing and miss out of that cutter. I know the stats weren't good from him last year, but he impressed during spring training. Who knows what it looks like for him at the major league level, what his role will be for this Cardinals team. But no doubt it was a good start for him today. I said John King, Steven Matz looked okay today, but he's moving to the rotation, obviously. Overall, I think that what we've seen the last several days from this bullpen has been encouraging. I think it's more close to what we thought we were going to see from this bullpen. If some of these guys that were off to bumpy starts in their first several starts of the year, notably Ryan Fernandez and John King can get going, because Ryan Fernandez is probably going to be more of a setup guy. He's probably going to be mixing in, getting some seventh inning action, because Phil Maton won't get every single seventh or eighth inning this year. Ryan Fernandez is going to have to pick up some of the slack there. John King is probably mostly going to play in games where you're trailing, it's close, but you need to keep in the game. That's probably what John King's role is going to be. Those guys' roles are just as important as Phil Maton and Ryan Helsley's, because you have to be able to stay in games. You have to be able to trust that the lower half, I guess I should say for better wording, of your bullpen is going to be able to keep you in games, keep you having opportunities. If those guys build off of the positive momentum we've seen in their last couple of outings, then maybe this makes a little bit more sense. It helps preserve Steven Matz, but gives him starting innings. I'm still very cautious about the six-man rotation in general. Stephen Carey mentioned it on Cards Hub 365 this morning as well. Starting pitchers are creatures of habit, and seeing them going into a six-man rotation, we'll see how some of these guys that have been in the major leagues for a long time adjust to that. But you know what? If, like I said, if we see the bullpen we've seen the last several days, maybe it won't be as bad as we all imagined it would be, based off what we saw at the beginning of the season from the pen.
He is Ethan Hannaford. I'm Chris Pelikan. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show, brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com and by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Folks, we want your input on this one. Cards lose 4-1 to the Phillies today. Jump into that comment section down there in YouTube land, and we will jump in and comment on your comments. Also hit that subscribe button while you are down there. So switching topics, Cardinals today decide to put Mason Wynn on the IL. He had said he was going to avoid that. The back has been an issue with Mason Wynn ever since he has come up, which scares the what out of me. Just back problems aren't fun ones. I've had them a few times in my life. No good, especially when trying to play a high-level shortstop like Mason Wynn. He goes on the IL. Nolan Gorman reinstated, as you mentioned. He comes in a pinch-hitting appearance today. So what is the vibe you're getting down there, Ethan, about Mason Wynn moving to the IL? The truth is they really have not, they don't have a true backup shortstop on this roster at this point in time. I know Sajaci's capable. Donovan is capable. But Gorman comes back, maybe to add some of that slug, obviously not an option at shortstop. But where are you sensing that all these puzzle pieces fit together with Mason Wynn gone for at least a week and a half and Nolan Gorman back up?
It's an interesting question, and it's going to be interesting to see where St. Louis goes with it. Even looking at, there had been question marks with Thomas Sajaci, the way he's been playing recently, that, once Nolan Gorman comes back, which we knew that was close, we knew that day was coming, who's going to be sent down? Is it going to be Michael Ciani, who's been this, late inning defensive substitution piece, or is it going to be Thomas Sajaci, who's played all over your infield, has contributed to the lineup, and at a time where you're missing a couple of pieces for your lineup, you've needed his bat more than I think you needed Michael Ciani's glove. But now Mason Wynn going down, that kind of adds a whole new perspective to it, right? Because as you mentioned, there isn't a true shortstop out there. Has Thomas Sajaci looked decent? Sure. Has Brendan Donovan looked fine? Yeah. But they aren't true shortstops. So, let's hope that this is 10 days and no more than 10 days, and that these guys are going to be able to hold their own. I imagine that because of this, Nolan Gorman is going to get a decent chunk of playing time. I think it's more likely now with the guys that they're missing that he is in the lineup more than he was prior. If that means that they're leaning a little bit more lefty heavy during this stretch, perhaps. But with Ivan Herrera not being an option at DH right now, you're hard at the middle infield, and Mason Wynn is out, so that's going to move guys that would have been playing second over to short. That's going to leave for more opportunity for Nolan Gorman. And I'll say this, Nolan Gorman needs to see lefty pitching as well. I know that the Cardinals are going to try to get him as many bats as they can, and it's really early in the year been between him and Burleson. Gorman needs to see lefty bats. That's going to be really important for his development. So, and we talked earlier about the lack of slug that these team has had. Let's hope that His slug gets going now that he's back. I mean, I liked his approach today. I think he saw one pitch, but he smoked it to center field. Unfortunately, Brandon Marsh was there. If he's maybe shaded a little bit differently, perhaps we're talking about a different result in this ball game. But unfortunately, it was right at him. So it is what it is. But it's going to be interesting. I think the biggest takeaway from it is that Nolan Gorman's probably going to be closer to an everyday player now. And I don't see them switching Jose Fermin and who's the other option that they had down in AAA that was playing?
Caballero or what's his name? No, the one who's been playing.
I'm totally blanking. Forgive me for that, chat. But
Barrero, right?
Barrero, thank you. Yes.
Barrero, Potato.
So they're not a better offensive option right now. So your choices are you go up and you have them play and they bat in the bottom of the lineup, probably where your bottom of the lineup's been pretty sharp to start off the season, or you try to keep those guys. You try to figure it out and have average defense from Brendan Donovan and Thomas Saggese at shortstop when their bats have been playing really well lately.
Well, and you know what, Ethan, like this is the one thing that we've had a lot of people talk about this season, right? This is the season of discovery, right? The reason the team did very little in the offseason is they had to see what they have in Nolan Gorman, in Jordan Walker, in all of these guys who are supposed to get a lot of at-bats this year. And I've had numerous people say to me, and I couldn't agree more, that if we get to next offseason and Chaim Bloom at the time says, we just don't really know what we've got in player X. Nolan Gorman's really the one who pops out to me. I think that every Cardinal fan is going to have the right to, pull their hair out at that point in time because they clearly wanted to let their younger guys play. So, yeah, I mean, I really hope that this is an extended runway for Gorman because I loved how I liked how he was looking. He looked very confident before the hamstring injury. I thought that he was attacking pitching really, really well. Maybe Brant Brown has kind of flicked a switch that's working well with him, but I would love to see the runway. And even when Mason Wynn comes back, the one thing you got to keep in mind about this lineup, and I know that Nolan Gorman is kind of the extra piece, so to speak, but when you have the versatility of a guy like Brendan Donovan, when you have the versatility of, an Alec Burleson to DH and play first base and maybe a little bit of outfield, you can do a lot of – Lars Nootbaar can play left, he can play center. There's ways to give guys one day off a week or one day off every 8 or 9 days and keep 10 players playing fairly regularly. And so, I do not want to be sitting here talking to you in August or September and saying, boy, I really wish Gorman would have gotten 400 ABs this year, 500 ABs. This team has to make a decision on whether he's, part of the future or not. They got to get that done. Obviously we're looking to win games, but there's no excuse for them not knowing what they think they have in Nolan Gorman and making an educated decision about his future after this season.
I could not agree any more with everything that you just said. That is the most important purpose of this 2025 season is giving these young guys opportunities to play, giving them the runway that they need to figure it out, to learn how to fail at the major league level. Not that they I shouldn't say that because these guys most definitely have had their struggles at the major league level, but how to respond from that, how to work through slumps. We know that Nolan Gorman's had his share of them, but you could also argue that he hasn't been able to fully work, or last year at least, he wasn't able to fully work through them. Fair enough. He was not good, and this Cardinals team thought that they were in a place where they could contend in the playoffs. They didn't, obviously. They fell short of the mark, but that's what this team was set up to be last year, and Nolan Gorman was not contributing in any way whatsoever towards that. Different story this year. This year, you're always trying to win ball games. That's always the number one goal. But there are other things that are taken into consideration, and figuring out what you have in Nolan Gorman, figuring out, I think it's a little bit of a different story in Jordan Walker, some of these other guys. But Nolan Gorman, I think, is the most important one because at some point, if we continue to see what we saw last year, it's like, okay, at what point do we start to, have an idea of who he is? I've been encouraged by what we've seen in the early going. It's a very small sample size, especially considering that it's that he had the IL stint to start off the year. But then and we heard Ali Marmol say this countless times during spring training as well. Like, yes, it's going to be difficult at times to find the room for all these guys to play and to get all these at bats, but also like it all kind of situates itself out. unfortunately, in the early going for the Cardinals, it has. With Gorman going to the IL, it wasn't even a question that Alec Burleson was going to be that in the lineup every single day. Same thing with Ivan Herrera, that Pedro Pajes was going to be the catcher. The baseball gods kind of like situate those things out. Now, is that going to be the solution all season long? No, but when you look at the end of the year, those kinds of things are going to be what help these guys get to those number of at bats that the team set the goal out for them to get to at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. And I want you to talk me off the ledge on this one, because the guy that we didn't think we needed to know more about, Mason Wynn, is down with a back injury for the second time in his career. And again, it sounds like he aggravated it on one of the plays he made in the field yesterday. And I just this is, when do we start getting concerned about our 23-year-old, 24-year-old shortstop who's had multiple stints on the IL now with back related issues? The way he plays the game, he's not going to be somebody who takes it easy on his body. He is athletic. He will lay out. He is always, kind of going 1,000 miles an hour, which is one of the reasons he's, kind of endeared himself to Cardinal fans the same way. Ethan, at what point in time do you start to get worried about Mason Wynn in the back?
So it's a good question. I don't know if Wynn actually had any stints on the IL last year. Now,
it was a thing, was it not?
It was a thing. It was lingering to the point where, if you remember early in the season, especially, fans were irate at how much Brandon Crawford was playing at shortstop.
Great,
and that was because of the lingering back issues that Mason Wynn was having. Now, I don't believe he ever had an IL stint. As I look at his transactions throughout the last several years, this is his first time on the IL. I think it's a little bit early. I don't know we don't know if they're connected at all. We may find that out at some point. It's hard to say at this point. It is concerning for sure with how young and how athletic he is. Last year, as the season went on, you saw his arm slot and the way he threw start to change. That wasn't related to the back that we know. That was a shoulder issue. And I think probably, there is a level to adjusting to playing a full 162 games that these players do go through, and that Mason Wynn went through last year and talked about it, how his arm was tired, his body was tired by the end of last year. So I'm going to, for the sake of my sanity, I'm going to hold off on the panic. And if we see it following a stint on the IL, I would say the IL stint after this one with lingering back issues is where I start to get concerned if we see it. I know we had the lingering at times last year. I'm going to hold off for one more before I really start to get concerned.
All right, well, we can take this as far as we want to. And I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because this is as much of a philosophical question as it is specific. But you see what the Atlanta Braves have done with all of their young talent, right? These guys who are still a year or two pre-arbitration, and they're locking these guys up because they see that these are great young players who, sort of represent what they want to as an organization. Your Michael Harris's, your Acuña's, your Spencer Strider's, all these different people. People have mentioned Mason Wynn in that same vein. This is the kind of guy that the Cardinals should be giving an 8-year contract to right now, because he's a cornerstone player. Two-part question for you, Ethan. Number one, in general, do you favor the Braves' approach of going after guys as soon as you peg them maybe 1 year into their career, year and a half, still with 4+ years pre-free agency, giving them these long-term deals? Or do you maybe be a little more cautious on that? And then part two of the question, let's slide Mason Wynn into this thing. Is this a guy who this team should be looking at for an 8-year contract at this point in time? Or is the back enough trouble in your mind that, we don't go the Paul DeYoung route and then have to live with a guy who doesn't produce or is not healthy for the extent of the contract?
I'll start with the back part. That's not enough of a concern yet to where it's the reason that I'm not giving Mason Wynn a contract extension at this point. I think that there is a healthy in between what the Atlanta Braves have done, even the Boston Red Sox with some of these early signings. Last year's Brian Bello, and
And
then this
Aaron
year,
Duran got a big deal, and then this year Christian Campbell. I mean, it's
So I think there is a healthy balance between that and waiting through full arbitration for some full like terms of arbitration and hitting it free agency for some of these guys. I'm thinking through this right now. I mean, obviously it's worked for some of these guys. I mean, look at Ronald Acuna Jr.'s contract. He is on an 8-year, $100 million deal. That is, people don't talk enough about how that is by far the biggest steal in Major League Baseball. By far. Now, I don't know what year off. I'm looking here. I'm trying to look at when they gave him that contract. They gave him that contract, it looks like, after the 2022 season. No,
that sounds about right.
Years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they gave it to, I believe it was 2021.
Okay.
So he had been up for a couple of years, but man, like that. So there's proof that it does work, but there's also other guys where you're giving them these contracts and it's not necessarily a guarantee. They gave Michael Harris a big one of those. I know that they've given a couple of these guys bigger ones and they've been okay, but now you're locked into these guys. They're your future. I think there's a healthy balance between the two. It makes me nervous, the thought of, doing what the Red Sox have done with some of these guys when you've barely even seen them. Yes, the potential is there, but that seems gutsy to me. We won't see the Cardinals do anything, obviously, until this upcoming offseason, but I do think that the Cardinals are going to, I would assume the Cardinals are going to try to be aggressive in trying to extend at least a couple of these guys that they feel are future parts of the organization. Otherwise, the value is going to continue to grow, and you're going to eventually be faced with a situation probably to where you can't afford all of them. So, like I said, I know I've said a couple times, but just one more time, somewhere in between being waiting till free agency and being at the start of your career, it depends on the individual player. I don't know if it's an exact science as to where it's the same for every single player, because like you said, different guys, it takes time to develop. Different guys go through injuries. The Cardinals aren't doing this with Lars Nootbaar 2 years ago, even a year ago, because of the injury concern. If he gets through a full year of this, different story. Maybe you could say the same thing with Mason Wynn. Am I considering, though, doing this with Mason Wynn? Yes, I am considering doing this with Mason Wynn. Is it a little bit early, maybe? Yes, but here's the thing. You're not signing Mason Wynn for his bat. Even if he has a sophomore slump this year, even if he ends up batting 240, which wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, he's there to be the cornerstone of your offense, of your defense for the future. So I would be very okay with that. I think they most definitely should be considering it come this offseason.
I'm still suffering from PDSD. That'd be Paul DeYoung stress disorder. I mean, the problem is the guy had a fantastic first year in St. Louis. They give him a huge extension long-term. The money wasn't gigantic just because it ate up a bunch of pre-arbitration years. But what it did was it made the team continue to run a guy out there who showed that he was not up for the job. It's so, I mean, this is, again, just my philosophy. I love the fact that the owners have negotiated 6 years of trials with these guys. You had 3 pre-arb, 3 arbitration years. You're going to know what you got pretty much in 6 years. Is it going to cost you a lot to sign a guy if you take him all the way to free agency? 1,000%. And maybe the Cardinals will never be the team that will sign a superstar after his initial, his initial 6 years. But man, I'll be real honest with you, Ethan. It is far too common in my mind for baseball players. I mean, for every one Albert Pujols and Ronald Acuna, I think you've got a bunch of Jonathan Singletons in Houston who signed a contract before he ever played a game and never did anything. Scott Kingery in Philadelphia signed a long-term deal before he ever played a game. And you just waste time and effort on these guys. David Bodie in Chicago had one good year, and all of a sudden he's got like a 6-year contract. It was to be a bench guy. And then all of a sudden the Cubs are going, God, he's not even very good. What do we do? And he gets DFA'd. So, baseball, the Albert Pujols deal worked out fantastically. 8 years, $100 million. And by the time he was, you can argue about whether or not they should have brought him back when he was a 30-year-old free agent. At the end of the day, they got his best years. I worry a little bit about giving anyone a super long-term contract because the nature of this game is inconsistency. It's injury. I'm not saying go full on Tampa where literally you trade everybody you have as they approach arbitration. So you and I are probably saying somewhat of the same stuff. Maybe we don't go full Atlanta Braves where we think we have our starting lineup in the year 2040.
Yeah, right.
But maybe we be very, very careful about 7, 8, 9 year contracts. And there's nothing wrong with Mason Wynn. I think he's the guy you build around. His personality is fantastic. This is a city that loves shortstops that can play defense. I mean, he clearly has that box covered. I think he's a mature kid. I mean, there's no reason I wouldn't invest in Mason Wynn other than the fact that I worry about anything happening with him. So
the one thing that I would say then is like there has to be a level of confidence that is going to continue. And in 1 year, in no case should be enough, right? In my opinion, like 1 year is not enough. Now, if you start to get into the 2 year, the 3 year, where you're seeing, even if you're seeing glimpses of it, now it needs to be a little like strong glimpses. And the main one that comes to mind is Lars Nootbaar. When he's been healthy, he's consistently been a solid piece. The underlying stats have been there pretty much his entire career. His awareness of the plate is unlike no other. I'm taking that into consideration differently than I'm looking at, Mason Wynn, a Jordan Walker who had one solid year, right? Jordan Walker, really the big struggles last year, but Mason Wynn, one solid year. I want to see this continue out for at least probably 2, maybe 3 years, depending on the player. But like for Nootbaar, he's already been up for several years. It's just been, it's like, okay, this is not year one, even though it may be year one fully healthy. Yeah. It's not year one, right? So that's why it's different depending on the player. There's so many different ways that you could take that. But the worst thing is that this Cardinals team, they spent a lot the last couple of years. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see them spend anywhere near, even when they're back to fully competing again. I don't think we see them get to $200 million because the priority, the idea is, right, is getting back to what has made you successful in the past. And that has never been being heavy, being hardcore in free agency. That has been being built around homegrown talent, around guys that you're drafting. And I think the Cardinals plan on going, or we know that they plan on going back in that direction. But I don't think that the amount of money being spent, I think it partially has to do with where the team is at this year. But I don't think I expect it to go back up significantly in the coming years, even if they are competing again.
He is Ethan Hannaford. I'm Chris Pelikan. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show. Cards lose 4-1 to the Phillies today. Cards Hub Postgame Show is brought to you by DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits, better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Cards fall to 6-8. They lose 4-1 to the Phillies today. Ethan, tomorrow they wrap up the series of the rubber game. Zach Wheeler, former Cy Young guy, against Matthew Liberatore for the Cardinals. Ethan, why don't you give me your closing thoughts from Busch Stadium today, and then your thoughts about tomorrow's series finale?
Well, I'll start with this. It was great to be back at the ballpark. Beautiful day. Good, decent crowd on. I think it was 30,000 in the ballpark. So definitely not what we're accustomed to here at Busch. But let's hope that the play continues to improve, and then as a result, fans are more enticed to continue coming back here. Like I said, there's been a lot of. I guess I will say this: it's refreshing to have a game where there's not a bunch of controversy as to did Ollie Marmol make the right or wrong decision? Did they go about this the right or wrong way? It was overall, it was a decent baseball game, and the Cardinals got outplayed by a team that's going to be contending for a world championship. You tip your cap. Tomorrow's going to be a big one. Tony La Russa is the man that said it. You go for series wins. You go for series wins. They beat Aaron Nola 2 nights ago. There's no reason that they can't get a solid start tomorrow from Matthew Liberatore. I keep my fingers crossed when I say that, and that they can put a couple of runs up against one of the better pitchers in baseball, and Zach Wheeler. Let's hope that they can come away with a series win. And then all of a sudden, if you win a series against Philly, then all of a sudden people are talking.
Couldn't agree more. Libby's got to avoid that big inning, right? He can avoid that big inning. He's been fantastic this year. So let's hopefully that is the next step in his development to avoid the crooked number. If we're talking about Tony La Russa, we don't need a 4 or 5 run inning. So anyway, hey, Ethan, it's always fun. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I will be back tomorrow with Stefan doing the rubber game post-game show. But for Ethan Hannaford, I'm Chris Pelikan. This has been the Cards Hub Postgame Show presented by Hot Shots and DraftKings. We will see you tomorrow.